today's episode of the Brains Bite Back podcast, we speak with Chris Duffey, a strategist for the Creative Cloud at Adobe, who comes on the podcast to discuss the exciting and evolving landscape of Web3 and the Metaverse. As a leading expert in this field, Chris provides insights into the foundational tools that allow for creativity in the Metaverse, as well as the rise of Web3 and its impact on this new digital world. And as the title suggests, we will also be diving deep into the topic of co-ownership and digital assets in the Metaverse. I hope you enjoyed today's episode.
Great to be here, Sam. Thanks for having me. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Chris Duffey. My day job is a strategist for the Creative Cloud at Adobe. And so we like to think of ourselves as the foundational tools that allow for creativity. And so over the last couple of years, a few years now, have really seen the rise of the excitement and opportunity around the metaverse. And so over the last few years, I felt like I had a personal and professional obligation to go really deep into the metaverse world. So I have a forthcoming book called Decoding the Metaverse coming out soon. And it's really a blueprint for success going forward to tap this gold rush of our generation in terms of imagination and co-ownership.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. And I'm super excited about our conversation relating to Web3 and the Metaverse. Now, I should say that we've touched on the Metaverse before, but Web3 is a topic that we have really yet to discuss on the show, certainly in any kind of depth. So would you be able to share with our listeners what Web3 is and how it works?
Definitely. I'd like to take a couple steps back before getting into describing and defining work for Web 1 and Web 2, which got us to this point. So obviously, I'm sure your listeners know Web 1 was the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was this read-only environment. Fast forward a few years to the early 2000s, and that's where the rise of Web 2 came about. And that was about this read and write environment where not only did we have access to information like never before, but now we had this ability to express ourselves like never before, to share with friends, family, and people we haven't met literally around the world. Fast forward then again a few years, and that really kind of evolved into the rise of Web 3.0. And I'm going to make a little distinction. Maybe your listeners know this, but there is a distinction between Web 3. So Web 3.0 was this ability to semantically share information coming out of Web 2. Out of Web 3.0, and sometimes we, in technology, paint ourselves into these semantic corners, but out of Web 3.0, what we commonly refer to today as Web 3 is this notion of co-ownership, of the ability to have blockchain enable kind of authorship, to have decentralized finance, to have decentralized applications, smart contracts, DAOs, and NFTs. And so those are some of the 7 or so characteristics of Web3 that is now going to fuel the foundation for the metaverse going forward. And happy to go deep into the Web3 or talk a little bit more about how Web3 and the metaverse are distinctly different, but greatly dependent upon each other for mutual success.
Yeah, actually, that sounds quite interesting. Would we be able to go down that rabbit hole of distinguishing between the two and how they interact?
Would love to, and I think that was my point of inspiration, curiosity a few years back, where one school of thought was it was being conflated, the metaverse and Web3 as one in the same. The other school of thought was, yes, they are distinctly different, with a slight tendency to think of Web3 as crypto, which it has a component to, but it is not one in the same there again. And so really had to go deep into talking about where are the shared borders between the metaverse and Web3. So we described some of the characteristics of Web3. There are similar 7 characteristics or so, and I don't get too religious about the characteristics, like does a metaverse use case have to have all of these? I personally don't think so, but it's a good framework to think about things going forward. So the metaverse essentially has 7 or so characteristics, one being immersive 3D, right? This ability to have an immersive experience with 3D dimensional aspects to it. The next one, real time. And a number of these you'll probably recognize, your audience will recognize, are characteristics taken from recent or current gaming environments, which is a great visualization currently of what the metaverse may look like. Second one being real time, this ability to interact with an environment in real time. The third being ownership, and this has overlap, a shared mission with Web3, this ability to have co-ownership, to not, I like to say, the metaverse is not about monetizing consumer time or attention, but rewarding their time and attention. And that gets to this underlying mission of ownership. The next one, maybe technically probably the toughest, is interoperability, this ability to have digital assets within metaverse worlds. And I'm of the belief, and I think we're having universal agreement on this, there is one metaverse, like one internet, but there'll be multiple metaverse worlds, much like we have multiple websites or platforms in the internet. We will have multiple worlds in the metaverse. And the goal is to have an interoperable ability to take your assets when you go from one environment to the other. Kind of the classic thought is, if you wear a pair of shoes in the real world, you can wear those shoes to work, and then if you go to a sporting event, you can wear those shoes there too. So why shouldn't we be able to take assets and data cross-platform? The next one, three left, is the shared experience, and that is this ability, again, taking inspiration from gaming, kind of this multiplayer opportunity for users in the metaverse to have a shared experience. And I think fundamentally that is one of the great promises of the metaverse, is to this ability to connect us like never before. And that's greatly driven by the ability to have shared experiences. The next one is a shared economy. This gets a little bit back to the ownership, but it's focusing in on the ability for the metaverse to create new forms of commerce, which is really exciting. Happy to go into some use cases about that. And then persistence, this ability for it to always be ongoing. It's almost to use a human trait, it's always living type of thing. The metaverse, it's ongoing. There's not necessarily a start or the end, like a static geometric movie per se. So those are 7 characteristics of the metaverse, and then 7 of Web3. And then we kind of talk about how those come together and amplify each other's abilities going forward.
I mean, all of these things sound so exciting. I personally love the idea of like ownership you mentioned. I think that sticks out for me as one of the most exciting to see develop. Now, I also want to say, like, from a business perspective, like, why do you think businesses should pay attention to Web3 in the metaverse, and how can they benefit financially from investing in this space?
I think we're all experiencing this over the last couple of years. It has been a dramatic, dynamic environment from an economic standpoint over the past 24 months or so, and I think it will continue to be like that for the near future, albeit the forward visibility is a bit cloudy at the moment, but I think the predictions are it's going to be very dynamic. And so I think all businesses, from just a business profit standpoint, are looking for opportunities for growth, right? So if you have that lens on things, you can then apply and point the flashlight towards the metaverse on how can the metaverse amplify that ability to create new business lines of growth. And I think this is where it gets really interesting, where there's going to be mutual benefit for the consumer and the businesses, where they co-create, co-develop not only products, but community and brand together. And that's ultimately a win-win for everyone. I think there's some aspects of that. I'm sure most people have heard the rise of the creative economy, and that is pointing a bit to this notion that we can now co-create together mutual success for businesses and consumers and individuals.
I think that does sound very exciting, and obviously as the creation element, as you mentioned, I think like the possibilities of how it can build like these communities, like you mentioned, I think it's really exciting. And I do want to say, like, besides businesses, what would you say that you're most excited about seeing when it comes to Web3 and the metaverse, like for society as a whole? Like, how do you see it shaping our society and our future?
Yeah, I think there's maybe two aspects to that. The metaverse, much like the internet, gave us democratized access to information. There's a growing belief, and I'm fundamentally a believer of this, that the metaverse is ushering in this new era of unlimited creativity. And that creativity is going to not only allow us to express ourselves in different ways within the different worlds, but it's also going to elevate the rate and speed of innovation from a business standpoint. So I think a really interesting dichotomy is forming about self-expression that overlaps and is hand in hand with business opportunities going forward. So I think that's one lens. The second one is maybe a little more philosophical. I think the metaverse is going to present a new case where there is limitless abundance, and that is going to introduce some new things that I can't solve, or one company can't solve, but I think collectively we probably can solve together. Is what happens when everything is of abundance. The abundancy to create, the abundancy to be monetized, the abundancy to access information, at your whim, the abundancy to literally travel, through time and space like never before, will usher in a new era of abundancy. And so I think we just have to start to consider the impact of abundancy, which is converse to some of the constraints we've had historically.
Yeah, that's quite bizarre to think about, because when I think about something in such abundance, my mind is limited. Like I can't even think of examples. I feel like this will be a completely new concept or something, a completely new experience. So even just like speaking about it or discussing it is hard for me. Funnily enough, of all the things we discussed today, that's probably one of the hardest things for me to wrap my head around.
There's a thought that we've kind of pulled back from the hustle culture a little bit, rightfully so, over the last number of years. But there's something to, right, the pursuit and the challenges and the setbacks in many ways. But what happens when those are easily accessible going forward? So that's something I've been thinking about after getting through the technical and the ethical implications of the metaverse. That's one question that I've been pondering recently, is the impact of abundancy, and how we can use that as fuel for greater innovation versus almost demotivating and kind of making us somewhat lazy, to put it in a blunt term.
Yeah, no, I get you. And it sounds cool. It sounds cool. I like the idea of it. And I wanted to move on and ask, so you did recently You mentioned this book that you've been working on, Decoding the Metaverse, Expand Your Business Using Web3. Now, obviously, we would recommend and encourage all of our listeners to go check it out. But can you share some cool insights from the book that might interest our listeners and give them a taste of what they can expect from this book?
Definitely. And this is my second book, and I have to share, it's somewhat therapeutic when I say this. Both books were fundamentally challenging and difficult. And, I had this realization, like, it doesn't get easier. And so that's just a personal reflection for anyone who's thinking about a book or writing a second book. Yes, there's some learnings, but it's equally as difficult. On the metaverse side, maybe I'll back up. The first book was about 5 years ago, called Superhuman Innovation, leveraging artificial. I came from a digital health background and did some early work with health data and artificial intelligence, and that was my aha moment for the merging of creativity, technology, and data. And so wrote a book about the impact of AI on innovation going forward. That was about 5 years ago, and used some early language transformers to not only write a book about AI, but write the book with AI as a co-author. And a few days ago, I was remembering how I was presenting that a few years ago, and it was literally the audience 100% was a blank face that quickly, before my eyes, turned to anger and asking that is not technically possible. That is going to be detrimental to society. And I have to say, I'm so pleased, fulfilled to see, the technology advance so much that it's pervasive across our culture now with Chat GPT. Much like that, I think we're in the still vision days of the metaverse. So I think this book is a call to action to get the mindset first in place, and then kind of the organizational structure to be able to act pretty quickly over the next year or two to get into the metaverse. A couple interesting factoids to get directly to your question. NFTs, one interesting factoid I learned about NFTs throughout the research is 99% of all NFT artwork is not on the block, it's on the cloud. And so perhaps like Ethereum moving from proof of work to proof of stake will change that. But currently, that's something everyone should be aware of if they're investing in NFTs or creating NFTs for a business standpoint, that know where your art asset is on the cloud, because if that cloud provider goes down, in many ways, your NFT could potentially go down. Maybe a second point on NFTs, even within the last year or so, it has seen a great maturity. It started out as almost an alternative to physical artwork as digital artwork investment. We're now seeing it evolve to more of a loyalty club with like token gating, this ability to have different tiers of membership and VIP access, which I think that is the fundamental broader utility of NFTs, which is quite exciting. We talked about, I think that's another important, I'll just underscore that, the importance. Web3 and Web 3.0 are distinctly different. Web 3.0 is semantic web, and then Web 3 is all about the interoperability and the number of those other characteristics that we talked about. So those are a couple points that I think are interesting factoids to get to create some intrigue to get into the metaverse a bit more.
Definitely. I mean, that's crazy what you said about like just the high prevalence of NFTs existing on a cloud rather than the block. I mean, I never knew that. That's absolutely, that's crazy. Cool, fantastic. Well, obviously you've been working on the book, but like book aside, what else are you working on? What's going to be next for you? What's up in your future?
It couldn't be more excited about the future. I think some of the headlines paint, in the economy paint somewhat of a narrowly narrative. If you zoom out a little bit more, couldn't be more excited from a long-term standpoint on how technology is advancing and is going to propel new business opportunities going forward, specifically around AI generation, right? So we talked about language transformers, kind of all the buzz in the headlines recently of Chat GPT, and then Google recently showcasing their work. My day job at Adobe, we're quite excited about maybe 4 horizons of generative AI. The first being the text generation, ironically, probably the hardest, with all of the nuances of the spoken and written word. The second one being visual generation, and we've seen some early entrance into the ether with like Midjourney, DALL-E, and a number of others, and we're working on something pretty exciting currently. The third one being generative video, and then the fourth being generative 3D. And all of those play really nicely into amplifying the immersiveness of the upcoming so-called metaverse. So really exciting time. A number of years ago, with the early formation of AI, with the caveat that AI has been around 50 plus years, since the 50s, but it really kind of took off because of compute power and bigger data sets just a few years ago. Again, I think that what's exciting is AI always felt like a great technology without a broader mission, and now when you couple that with the metaverse and Web3, I think we have a great trinity of technologies to propel humanity and business opportunity going forward.
Yeah, indeed, it is an exciting time to be alive. Lots happening, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what develops in this space. And if people are interested in keeping up with the work that you're doing or connecting with you personally, how can they do that, Chris?
Please, I love feedback, and I'm inspired, from the content creators out there on a daily basis, from the likes of TikTok and Instagram, YouTube. I get equal inspiration. So please reach out. I can be found at my website, Chris Duffey with a EY .ai. So chrisduffey.ai. Would love to meet, chat, co-create with the community out there.
Fantastic. Well, once again, thanks so much for joining me today, Chris. I can say I've learned a lot. Growing a company has many hurdles, from securing funding to expanding your business capabilities to ranking better on search. Each business challenge is uniquely complex. The solution to these challenges is growth-focused digital PR and marketing, and that is where our sponsor, Publicize, comes in. Publicize sets itself apart from traditional PR companies. It does not charge large retainers or churns out press releases whether you've got a newsworthy announcement or not. Publicize builds businesses' online presence and gets high-quality PR and media coverage for startups and entrepreneurs who are priced out of a broken PR industry. What's more, listeners of Brainspike Back can find the tools and resources they need to overcome common hurdles that many startups face when trying to generate long-term growth by visiting publicize.co/BBB. That's publicize.co/BBB. That is it for today's episode. Thank you for joining us. I hope you've learned something, and if you have benefited from today's episode, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast, as these reviews really help us grow the show. You can also follow us wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Just search Brainspike Back and you will find us. We hope you join us for more episodes in the future, and until then, take care.